What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast from the Action Network and Fantasy Labs. I'm your host, Chris Raybon. This is your NFL Week 15 DFS and fantasy preview. I'm joined by one of the most accurate rankers in the game, Sean Kerner. And Sean, great stuff last week. Had a bunch of touchdown call-outs, couple for Rome Odunze, Michael Wilson. You had Juwan Johnson, Tim Patrick with a couple. Watson had the 100-yard game. So great pod last week.
Yeah, that was amazing. Watching that main slate on Sunday, it seemed like every time I look up, somebody scored a touchdown that we, shouted out on this. And again, these are great for DFS. If you use these guys in DFS, you need touchdowns to take down GPPs. And we're giving out under the radar guys, guys that maybe people aren't rostering, maybe they're not betting on. So again, this is just a good example of they're showing value in touchdown markets, DFS, whatever. So hopefully we hit on a handful more this week.
Yeah, I think it was, let's see, we had 2 for Patrick, Tommy Tremble, that's 3, Juwan 4, Calcaterra 5, Freiermuth 6, Michael Wilson 7, Odunze 2. That's 9 touchdowns. Not bad.
Unbelievable.
With 3 teams on bye. 6 teams on bye. All right, we'll get to every game on the slate for a full Week 15 slate with a couple Monday night games even as well. But before we get to it, quick reminder, all of our fantasy football content is available right now over at fantasylabs.com. You can find all of our award-winning rankings and projections and more at fantasylabs.com. All right, let's go to the main slate. Got a full slate. Let's start it with the Cowboys coming off that Monday night just heartbreaking loss to the Bengals. They're going to Carolina, and Carolina is actually favored right now by 1.5. The total is 43. Sean, who do you like in Dallas, Carolina?
Yeah, so for the Cowboys, I'm going to have to stick with Kevontae Turpin. Obviously, he's limited in terms of playing time, but whenever he is on the field, he's a threat to score. Anytime he touches the ball, really, he's their kick, punt returner, one of the best in the game. Just every time he gets a return, it looks like he might take it to the house. He gets, designed rush attempts. He scored some touchdowns on those last year. Gets downfield targets, screen plays. So he's probably due for, one more touchdown rest of the season, maybe an explosive catch and run here. So I think this is a good spot for him, especially, against the Panthers here. So I'll stick with Turpin. On the Panthers side, I'm going to go Jatavion Sanders, who, he was able to return to action last week after that scary neck injury that knocked him out. Back in week 12, I was kind of interested to see how, they'd split up the snaps with him and Tremble, and he kind of returned back to the main pass catching tight end role. Ended up running around on 60% of Bryce Young's dropbacks. Tremble had 37%. So he's the main pass catching tight end. He's, he was their 4th round pick this year, probably their tight end of the future. So they're probably going to want to get him to see as much work as much as possible the rest of the season here down the stretch. And despite the heavy playing time, he had 0 catches, but his one target probably should have been a 60-yard touchdown. He broke wide open. Bryce Young couldn't throw it to him at the time because, he was under pressure. Then he saw him, and Bryce Young made a pretty good throw, and Sanders kind of stopped his route. It was just kind of a weird miscommunication where they almost connected on a 60-yard touchdown, but it just goes to show just how it's a game of inches where he was inches away from one catch, 60 yards and a touchdown, but he ended up with a goose egg. So I think it's just a really good time to buy low on him, especially after the goose egg. But he's shown some flashes this season. He's probably only going to get better here down the stretch. So give me Sanders here.
Yeah, and I mean, he's probably not even going to be the most popular tight end on his own team because Tremble had, back to he had a touchdown last game and he had a big game the game before that. All right, next up we got the Chiefs at the Browns. Chiefs 4.5-point favorites. The total 43.5. I'm going to roll with Noah Gray for the Chiefs. He has 4 catches in each of the last 4 games, and they're starting to use him as kind of that, almost like that number 3 wide receiver with, Juju and Watson. They're kind of factoring in as well, but Noah Gray usually gets more snaps than both of those guys, more routes than both of those guys. And he's starting to see more targets in the red zone. He has 4 touchdown catches over his last 4 games, a couple of multi-touchdown efforts. So quieted down a little bit in terms of the touchdown department these last 2 weeks. So I like kind of buying low on him to get back in the end zone and just put up another big game. His last 4 games, his target rates per route have been 21%, 15%, 22%, 24%. So that's very good. And Cleveland does play a lot of man coverage, and Gray is one of Patrick Mahomes' top targets against man coverage. One of the few tight ends in the league, really, that has success against man coverage, and not just zone. So give me some Noah Gray. And then for the Browns, Jerome Ford. This is a game that kind of, at least on paper, sets up as a trailing game script for the Browns, which tends to lean towards Ford over Nick Chubb. And Ford starting to eat into Chubb's early down work a little bit too. We'll see if that continues or not. But we definitely saw Chubb. I don't think he played in pretty much the entire fourth quarter because Cleveland was behind last week. So you could see more of that and also get some more early down carries for Jerome Ford. So like him for the Browns. All right. Dolphins at the Houston Texans. Texans favored by 3, the total 47.5. Who you like in this one? Texans, Dolphins, Sean?
Yeah, so for the Dolphins, I'm going to go with another dart throw again. I'm going to stick with Malik Washington. Going to try again this week on the rookie just because plus 650 long shot doesn't score a touchdown that week. Doesn't necessarily mean I want to shy away from it, especially in bigger tournaments. Like everybody's going to be on, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Jonnu Smith, but Washington has a ton of upside. And again, he operated as the clear number 3 receiver in this offense. Odell Beckham's role just keeps getting smaller and smaller. And Washington's kind of like their Kevontae Turpin with a bit more playing time, but he has big playability, can score anytime he touches the ball. He's, their return man. He gets design runs. He scored on a design run back in week 10 for 18 yards. And I remember he blew me away in preseason. He had like a 20-plus yard catch, a 20-plus yard run, and a 20-plus yard return, all in like the same quarter. But he has big playability, and he's on, an offense in the Dolphins where that is a very good asset to have. So I think he's going to hit one of these weeks. Could be this one. I think this is going to be a shootout. So give me Malik Washington here. On the Texan side, I'm going to go with a little bit more safer play here with Dalton Schultz. I just think he might be a bit overlooked here coming out of the bye, but he's been playing well lately. Usually going to be out there for about 75% of CJ Stroud's dropbacks. And the Dolphins have been pretty shaky against tight ends recently, so I think that's a good spot for Schultz. Scored his first touchdown of the season back in week 13. I think you had called that. He's had 4 more in all 4 seasons so far, so probably still a good buy low, going forward. And I think this is a spot where he could be overlooked in DFS just because he is coming off that bye. But I think Schultz set up nicely here against the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, tight end is already just kind of tough. So a guy like Schultz and CJ Stroud should bounce back too, as you called out in our projections pod. So, yeah, I like it. All right, next up, we got the Bengals at the Titans. Bengals coming off the short week, going to Tennessee, 5-point favorites on the road. The total's 48. I am going to roll with Chigakonkwo on the Titan side. The Bengals are 26 in DVOA against tight ends. And Logan Wilson, their linebacker, went on IR. He's one of their best linebackers in space. So teams have been making a point to kind of target their tight ends against the Bengals. I remember, I think it was the Chiefs earlier this year did that, and a few other teams. So I'm going to roll with Okonkwo here. He is the main pass catching tight end for the Titans, and he has been seeing a little bit of an uptick in route rate, right around that 70% mark. It's been more at 60% for the season, but when they're in must-pass situations, if there's any tight end out there, it's usually going to be him over Wiley or Nick Vannett. And on the Bengals side, got to go with Yossi Vash here. He's still under 4K, it looks like, on DraftKings, and he's not going to give up that role, it looks like, to Jermaine Burton. I guess Jermaine Burton just missing too many meetings, falling asleep, catching too many Z's when they're meeting and not practicing well, because Yossi Vash continues to be out there as that clear-cut number 3 receiver. Burton's getting, anywhere from, 2 to 7 routes per game, usually most games. So like Yossi Vash against the Titans, because you gotta cover Chase, you gotta cover Higgins. I mean, these guys are, top 5, top 6 fantasy receivers. So Yossi Vash is going to get opportunities in single coverage, and got a touchdown 2 games ago, got a touchdown 5 games ago. So 2 in his last 5. I can live with that. So give me Yossi Vosh and Chig. Washington at the Saints. Saints probably starting Hayner, could be Rattler, but Carr suffered a fracture on his non-throwing hand. He should miss some time. The Saints 7-point underdogs at home. The total 43.5. Washington off the bye. Who do you like, Sean?
All right, I'm going to get crazy here and go 2 backup running backs. The first is Jeremy McNichols of the Commanders. With Austin Eckler out, he's operated as the clear number 2 back. Chris Rodriguez got a ton of work last game, but that was mostly in garbage time. So, this is a good spot for McNichols to see a ton of work. They're 7-point favorites here. Saints are terrible against the run. They rank 31st in DVOA against the run. Brian Robinson Jr. will be popular and rightfully so, but I think, McNichols is in a solid spot here. He's a good, pivot off of Robinson, some nice leverage in GPPs, and probably offering value in the touchdown market as well. So love McNichols here. I know we've tried to hit on him a few times. Yeah, got to stick with him. And on the other side, another backup running back, Kendre Miller, finally returned to action last week. And there's no Taysom Hill, which I thought would kind of open up specifically, for Miller to get more touches. And, sure enough, he saw 10 carries for 32 yards. Clearly the number 2 back over Jamal Williams right now. So the Saints, with their season over, Derek Carr's out, Taysom Hill's out, probably makes sense to give Miller as much work as possible. Like there's really no sense in just, pounding Kamara the rest of the way. So he was a 3rd-round pick from them last year. Obviously, he's been hurt a ton, but he reminded me of Aaron Jones. I think he has a ton of upside, and they probably want to see what they have in him over these next few games. So I think he's a sneaky play here again. And GPPs, especially, if they're getting blown out, could see even more work. So I like Kendre Miller here as well.
Yeah, like I was going deep last week watching Quint Kubiak interviews, trying to figure out what they were going to do without Taysom, and Kendre Miller was immediately the guy that popped. I think you and I were both pretty high on him compared to the consensus in terms of our rankings as well. But did you get a chance to see his touchdown? It was like a pile push. Like he should have been down like probably the 3 or the 4, and it was just one of those continues to push the pile into the end zone. So yeah, I'm excited about Kendre because this is, remember, he got put on IR. I've never heard this before. This has been the weirdest injury year by far, but he got put on IR when he shouldn't have been put on IR. Like he was hurt maybe for that week, and Dennis Allen is like threw him on IR. It's like parting shot, and then he's just stuck on IR for a month. So then the Kubiak's like, he gets a clean slate with me. So like he's been healthy for weeks now. We're just waiting to get him off IR because he got thrown on IR. Yeah. Poor guy, man. Dennis but he looked good. Yeah. Oh, he did. He would play Jordan Mims over him. Like it was crazy.
Yeah.
But I like Kendre as well. And you're right. He could cut into Kamara's work too. Kamara 17 carries, Kendre 10 last week, and then Kendre outsnapped Jamal Williams. I think it was like 18-5. So good spot for Kendre. I love that one. All right, Jets, Jags. For the Jets, I was thinking about Tyler Conklin because the Jags are terrible against tight ends, but I'm going to go with Lazard here because I think we've already hit on him a couple of times on the show, but he's the guy that kind of just was real quiet in that last game, and we've seen that he's had some crazy upside at times this year. So I think he's going to kind of be a forgotten guy, but he's out there about 80% of the time running routes, and he even took a couple snaps away from Devontae Adams. So like Lazard coming off the quiet game for the Jets. But don't forget about Conklin as well, because the Jags, if you're just kind of looking for a dart throw tight end, you could do worse than targeting the Jags, who are dead last. And then on the Jags side, Devin Duvernay. Now, he might lose some snaps this week. He's been operating as a slot receiver. He might lose some snaps this week to, like, if Josh Reynolds is active and maybe they want to kind of work him in a little bit more. But as it stands, Duvernay's been playing over half the snaps as their, bona fide go-to slot receiver. So like him, he has some juice. He can take a jet sweep or handoff and get something going in the return game as well. So Lazard and Duvernay for me for the Jets. And the Jags stay with these New York teams that are just down bad. Baltimore going to Baltimore going to the Meadowlands to take on the New York Football Giants. Baltimore 15-point favorites, a total 43. I mean, is this the Keaton Mitchell game, Sean? Like they have a big enough spread that maybe they could dust him off. No, if he's active, that is.
Yeah, exactly. This is a luck rankings game.
Okay,
but yeah, no, I think this is gonna be a blowout. That's why it's tricky. I'm gonna go Justice Hill here. Because like if Keaton Mitchell's active, I could see him getting mop-up duty in the second half. So he's certainly in play if he's active. But Justice Hill could see more work. Like this is obviously going to be a run-heavy game plan, but would it make sense to give Derrick Henry 25 plus touches here? Probably not. They probably want to spell him a bit. So I could see Justice Hill just getting more work on the ground here as well, including the passing down work. There's not going to be much passing here, but Hill could get a cheap touch on here for sure. So I'm going to go with Justice Hill, but I think you're just looking for whichever backup running back you think might be in there in the second half. Justice Hill is essentially a starter, so I don't think he's going to be out there if they're up by 30 points in the fourth quarter. So if Keaton Mitchell isn't active, it's this Rasheen Ali guy. He's not getting touches either. I don't know what they're doing there, but hopefully Mitchell's active. We get to see him again this week. But I'm gonna stick with Justice Hill here just to be safe. On the other side, though, I'm gonna stick with Darius Slayton again. His routes run rate continues to climb back up. Last week it was 86%. He's going to be getting downfield targets. This is a pass funnel Ravens defense. They've been playing better lately, but this should be a pass heavy game script for the Giants. So just trying to get a couple deep balls here from Slayton, and he's a sneaky play in DFS and probably in touchdown markets as well.
Yeah, I think the play for touchdown markets is like I would bet Mitchell, and because if he's active, that means they foresee maybe we're blowing him out, we'll give him some carries, and if he's not active, you just get no action. You just you get to you just get your money back.
How about this? Take the Ravens on like an alt line, like minus 23.5. And then take Keaton Mitchell to be the last touchdown scorer, maybe like 40 to 1.
Oh, yeah. I like that. Yeah, I like that.
We don't have odds for that yet, but that's my play here.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, because Keaton, if he was inactive last game, he was active the first few, but if he's active after being inactive, that kind of shows, hey, we might want him to mop up. So and if not, you just get your money back. See, I like that, and I like that last touchdown. That's
I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna bet that. Unofficial play, so it'll hit. It won't be in my official record, so it's gonna hit. But I bet that'll be like 60 to 1 or something like that with heavy correlation.
Absolutely, no, I love that. All right, Battle of Pennsylvania. We got the Steelers at the Eagles. Eagles 4.5-point favorites. The total is 43.5. Looks like no George Pickens again for the Steelers in this one, so I'm gonna go with Pat Freiermuth. I just think the Eagles cornerbacks are very good, and I know Thielen had a big game against them, and I guess Rams receivers did okay, but in general, I don't trust these Steelers receivers, non-George Pickens Steelers receivers against them. So I do think there's going to be some funneled action to the other pass catchers, Jaylen Warren, Najee, and of course Freiermuth. So like Freiermuth, who is starting to tick up in terms of his usage, got in the end zone 2 of the last 3, and Grant Calcaterra for the Eagles. They just don't play many guys outside of their guys, and they aren't passing very much. So this is probably going to be like a squeaky wheel AJ Brown game. But at the end of the day, Calcaterra is going to be out there 90% of the time. He did come through last week, so he's kind of their Dallas Goedert. I don't think he's going to get as many targets as Goddard most weeks, but he does have that upside. And Pittsburgh has been playing well, so Pittsburgh's one of those teams that really could find itself, kind of in a trailing game script again. It's not out of the realm. I mean, they beat the Panthers by 6 last week, and Steelers, you can't just run all over the Steelers like you can the Panthers. So could be a sneaky spot for an uptick in passing for Jalen Hurts this week. So give me Calcaterra and Freiermuth, both tight ends in the Battle of PA. Next up, Colts coming off the bye, Broncos coming off the bye. Colts are 4.5-point underdogs on the road in Mile High. Their total is 43 in that one. Mentioned the Broncos. Mentioned Josh Reynolds. The Broncos did release him, and that's how he ended up on the Jaguars. So their receiver room is back to set with Sutton, Bailey, Franklin, Will Jordan, Humphrey, and Marvin Mims. Who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I'm gonna for the Colts side, I'm gonna have to go with Alec Pierce here, playing it safe. Just unclear if Josh Downs will return this week. So I still think A.D. Mitchell is like a permanent dark horse play, but again, gonna go with Pierce here. Pierce is usually good for 1 or 2 deep shots a game. Just hoping he connects on one of them here. He tends to every other week, it seems. So I like Pierce here. On the Broncos side, I love Devon Bailey here. You mentioned Josh Reynolds got cut, so that's going to help, solidify Bailey's playing time the rest of the season. Going to be in that 60 to 70% routes run range most weeks. And he gets a boost here against the Colts that tend to play a lot of zone coverage. His yards per route run rate goes up nearly 2 full yards against zone. So this is a great spot for him coming off that bad game before the bye. So I think his rostership will be low. But solid bet here for, handful of catches. So I like Vele here as a sneaky dart throw.
Yeah, because it's like, they got Kenny Moore in the slot, but they're not playing a ton of man coverage. So it's not like Moore is going to be following Vele unless they really switch up their scheme. All right. Next up, we got what should be a shootout. Buffalo at Detroit. Detroit 1.5 point favorites, 54.5 the total. I think that's the highest total of the year, right? It's got to be the highest total of the year.
It's that Eagles Packers game like 54. It's up there.
Yeah, it's either that one. I think it might have closed a little lower, but it's 54.5 is I don't know. Haven't seen that in a while. So love this game for DFS purposes, but it's going to be pretty popular. For the Lions side, I got to go with Sam Laporta because, we got Patrick coming off the big game. He's only 100 hours less now than Sam Laporta. So I feel like you got to roll with Sam here. He does have that touchdown upside, has been on the field about 85% of the time on pass plays when healthy over these past few games. And on the Bills side, Ty Johnson, the running back, it's potentially a trailing game script here. This is the best team in football, or one of them, in the Detroit Lions. So if there's any team that could get Buffalo behind, it's the Lions. And we saw the Rams do it last week. So I think Ty Johnson gets a boost in games like this at the expense of Ray Davis and obviously Cook. So like Ty Johnson for the Bills and Laporta for the Lions. Tampa Bay at the Chargers. Chargers coming off that Sunday night heartbreaker to the Chiefs, -2.5. No, actually, I think it's 3 at most spots against the Bucs. Total 46.5. What do you like in this one, Sean?
Yeah, for the Bucs, I'm gonna go with Sterling Shepard, who's kind of taken over the Chris Godwin role ever since Godwin's gone down. He's averaged about a 70% routes run rate. Really starting to see Chris Godwin like target rates too, 28% over the last 3 games. So now he has 4 or more catches in 3 straight games. And this could be more of a pass heavy game script against the Chargers, who could take a lead against them. But Shepard's a guy that he probably doesn't have as much touchdown upside. I think he's a better bet for a handful of catches. So like a full PPR site like DraftKings, he makes a ton of sense. But like you mentioned, I guess he is starting to see more end zone targets. So maybe he has more touchdown upside than even I realized. But I'm high on Shepard here. I think the market's probably still overlooking him either way. And again, he's kind of becoming the dollar store version of Chris Godwin. So can't hate that. And on the Chargers side, gonna have to pour one out for my boy Will Disley, who might be out a few weeks now, which is probably the rest of the season. We'll see. But that means the next one up is Stone Smart to lead the way for the Chargers tight ends, who look pretty good. After Disley went down, he stepped up, caught 3 passes for 54 yards. Should see a 60 to 70% routes run rate this week. And I thought he looked pretty solid. So I'm going to have to go Stone Smart here. I don't know if a ton of people are going to rush to go play him in DFS or bet on him, but I liked what I saw. So I think he has a ton of upside here. And now what should be, the lead pass catching role for the Chargers tight end room.
Yeah, I mean, if Will Disley could, Stone Smart is more of a pass catching tight end,
True,
in my opinion, than Will Disley. It's just Stone Smart doesn't play as much, because he's more like the Hayden Hurst, where not going to give you as much blocking, whereas Disley's a little more versatile. But now they really have no choice. I mean, they have Tucker Fisk and Stone Smart on the roster. And I guess Matlock, the fullback, could play.
Yeah.
I guess he could play some like H-back kind of tight end. But yeah, you're going to see he's probably going to get that 60, 70% route rate that Hurst got earlier in the year and that Disley was getting. So yeah, I like Smart a lot. I think that's a good call. Patriots at the Cardinals. Cardinals 6.5-point favorites. The total was 45. For the Patriots, I'm going to go with Antonio Gibson. He started to see an uptick in usage the last couple of weeks. Had a nice touchdown run inside the 10-yard line against the Colts right before the bye, and he's just looked like the better runner. Stevenson has continued to see, pass down work, but if Gibson gets more early down work, I think that's a good sign. I think that's very possible that continues here against the Cardinals, who have been a good matchup against the run. And for the Cardinals, Michael Wilson, he did get in the end zone last week. Good call on that. But I got to go back to him here because he's still pretty cheap. I think he's $4,400 on DK, so not super expensive. And he's starting to see a little bit of an uptick in snap rate, getting some slot snaps in there. Dortch and Zay Jones aren't really being used much. So like Michael Wilson to continue his little mini breakout here. All right, before we get out of here, mentioned a couple of times on this pod, we have the Parlay Express account on the Action Network app where we post long shots and parlays and things, we wouldn't necessarily recommend you go crazy with on our main accounts. But if you're into that kind of thing, we're going to choose each choose one of our guys from this pod as a touchdown parlay. So Sean, who do you got on your side?
I'm going to have to go with Stone Smart.
I'm gonna go Smart. Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna go with Antonio Gibson to get back into the end zone for the Patriots. So see, Stone Smart and Antonio Gibson. Look out for that on the Parlay Express handle on the Action Network app. We don't have odds for them yet. Obviously, it's early in the week as we record this, but that is going to do it for us. Week 15. DFS and fantasy football preview here on the Fantasy Flex. Make sure to subscribe to the pod so you don't miss an episode all season long. We're still dropping 3 per week. FantasyLabs.com for all of our fantasy football content, including our award-winning rankings and projections. You can use code FLEX40, that's FLEX40, for $40 off right now. Sean is on X at _oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon, and we're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until next week, let's get this money.